I'm taking my 2-year-old granddaughter for her first trick-or-treating if the weather is nice. So
Oh, that's exciting. And what's her costume?
I think she's insisting on wearing her unicorn cape with the butterfly wings.
Oh.
Of course.
So
Who wouldn't?
right.
Yeah.
So I think she's got everything covered. Rare and in flight.
They don't really do Halloween here in Morocco. Apparently, real Muslims do not believe in ghosts. However, many of my students apparently do. And if I had $1 for every time I heard the phrase real Muslims, ... I could probably retire happily. But yeah, we don't do Halloween here, which for my 3-year-old is probably okay for now. And strangely enough, I think I mentioned my wife is Japanese. When we lived in Japan, they love Halloween in Japan.
It's interesting.
How long are you in Morocco for?
Indefinitely.
Alex, do you have a preference of when we start?
Oh, it's all up to you.
Oh, no. All
You're the
right, well.
host. You make the big calls.
All right, well, welcome everyone to another Able Muse reading. I'm your host, Carrie Green. I'm also apparently the one in charge today. So hopefully everything will go all right. I am an Able Muse author myself, author of Studies of Familiar Birds, which was published in 2020. And I know Alex would like to say a few words. So let me begin by introducing him. Alexander Pepple, as we all know, founded and edits Able Muse and Able Muse Press. And he also founded and directs the Erratosphere online workshop. His poetry and prose have been or will be published in Barrow Street, River Styx, American Arts Quarterly, Light, Think Journal, Euphony, Per Contra, Eclectica, Measure, and elsewhere. He edited the Able Muse anthology. Alex?
Hello, thank you, Carrie. Thank you for the introduction. And it's a pleasure to see everyone here today for another Able Muse reading. Tonight, this afternoon, we'll have 3 excellent Able Muse poets. We'll have Lorna, we'll have Richard, and we'll have Didi. And actually, they're all winners or finalists in the Able Muse Book Award. So I should also mention that I'll be posting all their links in the chat where you can see their find out about their books. And meanwhile, maybe I should just give you a little bit of intro. So first, I'll mention that I'll be posting this link where you can see all the authors' websites, and so you can have access, go and look at their books and their information, plus other links to Able Muse, say things like our newsletters and the press links. So that's one. So for authors today, this is the link where you can see the event page for this event for our 3 authors. So the book from Lorna is called Green Hill, and you can see the cover here. Just to give you a little bit of taste of what's in store when you get the books. And this is Didi's book, Greed, a Confession. And we'll have John here who wrote the foreword for this book. Thank you, John. And this is Richard's book, which is All the Wasted Beauty of the World. So without further ado, I hope you have a fun time listening to the wonderful work of our poets this afternoon. And without further ado, Carrie, take it away.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, thank you, Alex. And so our poets will be reading in this order, D.R. Goodman, Richard Newman, and then Lorna Knowles Blake. I'll ask everyone, please feel free to share your love for the poets and their readings in the chat and with the Zoom emoji. At the end, I'll unmute everyone and we can all clap for everyone together. So let me begin by introducing Dee Dee. D.R. Goodman is the author of Greed, A Confession, twice winner of the Able Muse Wright Prize for Poetry, and 2015 winner of the Howard Nemerov Sonnet Award. Her work has appeared in such journals as New Ohio Review, Canary, Think Journal, Crazy Horse, Seattle Review, and many others. Her work has been chosen for inclusion in Ted Kuzer's American Life in Poetry, the anthology Sonnets, 150 Contemporary Sonnets, and Extreme Sonnets, edited by Beth Houston. A native of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, she now lives in Oakland, California, where she is founder and chief instructor at a martial arts school. Thanks, Dee Dee.
Thank you, Carrie and Alex and everyone. I'm so pleased to be able to read on Zoom or anywhere. And I'm going to harken back to the good old days way back before the pandemic, and even before that, when around the time I was putting together my book, and I used to like starting my readings with this particular poem. It's called A Certain Joy. There's a certain joy that depends on nothing. One inhabits it. It is there in the day when you walk out, whether chill and gray or magnified by light, and you inhale it. Now it is in your blood and it fills you to the skin, wraps a tightness around your heart. It is in you, yes, and equally in the world, where it speaks from the darkest rose in your neighbor's garden, or the bright metallic flash of an absurdly tiny bird, copper and green and red in the glinting air. The city streets are miraculous, how they wind downhill through the trees. The smell of smoke from the houses, sweet nostalgia. This in spite of everything. If you met a stranger, his face obscured in the hood of his night black cowl, you would say, how the sun glints on the beautiful curve of your blade. I heard the great horned owls last night, so I'm going to tell you about that. October and the owls. October and the owls again. The chill and smoke that filter through the terrace screen are shadowed by a hint of sound. Between faint calls, a hollow silence, and to will the sound again, we lean onto the sill, hold stiff and stop our breathing, strain to glean some signal from the night. Outside, a scene of moonlight, pine and cloud, and down the hill, faint glimmer through the branches. Now the far dark bass vibration, syncopated, deep as breath across an ancient vintner's glass. King bottles played as flute. Old Melchior and Jeroboam call across the steep, cool night in counterpoint and fade and pass. Now it's still October. It's not even November, but I'm already seeing holiday stuff everywhere. I think we all have gotten used to that. But it's turned cold here, and things start to get dark earlier, and the glittering holiday lights that people put up provide a little bit of hope. Seasonal song. What warm and spiny hope, what tiny glow now kindles like a phosphorescent cell, pale bioluminescence on a swell of steely inner sea. Faint as a low blue flame it settles in, and left to grow unchecked would spread its bloom across the tide. Bright streak of optimism just beside the monstrous ocean's darkest ebb and flow. Winter has struck the flint of the strange light, has tricked the mind, and now the season's turn means change is possible, and all that's fine and clear may yet infuse a future bright beyond all reason. Freeze, revise to burn, as easily as water wants to wine. I seem to have picked out mostly sonnets here. You're going to hear a lot of sonnets today, but not all of them. The face of things. The eye knows leaf from hummingbird at once, even at distance, even dusk, discerns among the flecks of green an imminence of sudden flight, as though the will returns a subtle wavelength, visible as light. The green of foliage, the leafy green of matching feather, then a clever sleight of surface that conveys a deeper scene, the heartbeat underneath. The eye both in and measuring the world, an inborn task that even camouflage won't contravene, cannot help turning back behind the mask. Depth cannot hide, and so it flutters, sings, betrays itself upon the face of things. So I'll tell you about a little science fair exhibit I did when I was a small child in elementary school. I had an object I thought was pretty cool that I had found on a hike in the desert, and I asked my mom, how do I get started making this into a science fair display? And she said, well, just tell them what it is. Tell them what it is. Science fair. This is a vertebra from a cow. Big as my hands, this bare bone, bleached and parched by its time in the desert sun. Notice the transverse process, the spinous process, the vertebral foramen, that tube through which the spinal cord would run, like a necklace wire or a string of lights, sparking and humming with life. Here it is a lost bead, its beauty not accidental. These polished curves and sculpted holes for the passage of nerves and blood. In a scatter of weathered stones, it would announce itself familiar. So it did when we came hunting arrowheads, a white spill of bones dispersed on a hummock of sand. I was small enough. I crouched in an arching rib cage, held a leg bone in my two hands, the skull too heavy to drag by its horn back home. I took instead this vertebra, once a part of a swaying spine that was hung with a hammock of cow who ambled among arrowheads and ate and saw perhaps the stars at night, white and scattered like bones, and died at last a simple or an awful death. Now here, plain and labeled, no blinking lights nor fancy models. This is a vertebra from a cow. It speaks for itself. It will win no prize. It's just the childish wonder from which the rest derives. So my mom was my science fair advisor. Now let me have you meet my mom in another sonnet. Endangered species. Picture my mother waiting for the shuttle. Hot day, a rattler's sunning in the road. She walks right up, leans in, her open-toed low heels in striking distance, sees the rattle. 9 segments, she observes, markings more subtle than Texas Diamondback. And then she fears the coming traffic, quickly commandeers a trash bin from the curb, inverts the metal to set it down protectively. Last look, slit pupil eyes stone still, one languid flick of tongue. She hikes back up the hill to tell the gate guard what she's done. He, after all, wears boots and has a broom. One of the two, the snake, my mother, less endangered now. So let me take a sip of water before this next one. It's called Sometimes I Shape My Lips. Sometimes I shape my lips to take a sip and feel them as my mother's lips, her face within my face, and I can see her tip the glass, bright arc of liquid meets a trace of smile and something deeper in her eye, a glint of self-awareness that she knows I'm watching, is determined to deny self-consciousness with her insouciant pose. She glances off, and suddenly I fear she'll turn, meet eyes across the warp of years, and vanish like a myth. The past resealed, the lost surrendered, or the lost revealed as never lost, for how it has returned, ingrained in what my face, my body learned. Whispers crystallize and strike the ear. A child can't know her parents' losses. She'll absorb a sadness, undefined and gray, accepted as foundation in the way wild creatures take their footing in the crags, no thought to it. And understanding lags for years, for decades, trapped in times before, when parent seemed a paragon, both more and less than simply human. Here, sit still in the unfinished story, whispers heard in childhood crystallize and strike the ear of one who now knows life. A cryptic word, faint clue, gains meaning, and the steep terrain, till now unquestioned, suddenly comes clear, the jagged rock fall of a mother's pain. And this poem, Wallet, I read at the issue launch, and it's connected to that previous one. Wallet. My long dead uncle's wallet, duofold brown leather, overstuffed with notes and scraps, like anyone's, IDs and photographs, phone numbers, ticket stubs, receipts, an old prescription, but in someone else's name, a mystery, a life, as though he'd slipped his billfold from his trouser pocket, flipped it on the dresser yesterday, the same brown wallet they removed, perhaps with keys, his watch, a ring, and carried him away now 60 years ago. Beloved, this man, and lost at 39. And somehow these small, brittle fragments are enough today to light in me my mother's grief again. So let's see how I'm doing. I've been hitting you over the head with sonnets, so now I'll hit you over the head with rondeaus. Sometimes I have to make a deliberate effort not to write sonnets every time I sit down. So I decided at one point to try rondos, and then I kind of got on a jag, as I tend to do. But this one, a rondo involving poppies, which which I wrote near the beginning of the pandemic when we were all trapped at home and reading about large numbers of deaths. And I noticed the California poppies that grow more or less like weeds, but lovely weeds around my house. Poppies 2020. The poppies blooming on our hill have slid down, scattered. Now they spill through rock and wall into the street, take root like weeds beneath the feet of those who pass and those who will. Bright orange flickers in the fill that crowds the road, unswept and still unweeded this mid-spring, concrete with poppies blooming. And neighbors walk, and from her sill another watches, nodding, will step back from friend, from stranger, greet with stricken courtesy, not meet, but note the breeze, the wren tits trill, the poppies blooming. And now one of my other obsessions, which is worrying about wildfire. It's something we all do living where I live. And I guess now living almost anywhere. 4 rondos for the Oakland Hills. 1, the grass grows dry on Route 13 upslope. It lays a fuse between the freeway and our woods, our street. A swelter rises, rush hour's beat gets louder, creatures graze, serene, sole witness as these fleet machines, their heat and spark, their gasoline, bring human fault within 2 feet of grass grown dry. A doe's still gaze cannot discern an arsonist's intent, return him back into the driver's seat, nor douse the lighted cigarette flicked thoughtlessly in thoughtless turn where grass grows dry. 2, we wait for fire to devastate our hills, our homes, to flare in late hot autumn or because of drought in spring or summer, flush us out from wooden house past wooden gates. Dead leaves and bark accumulate. We rake and haul, evaluate the neighbor's lot with fear and doubt. We wait for fire. We sniff the air, perseverate, pass parcel taxes, local, state, to salary and train the stout, brave crews we hope will put it out when flame whips high in wind. We wait for fire. 3, after the fire of 91, I saw a cat-like creature run and vanish in a breath. That tail, a fox, rare sighting on this hill, and ghostly. Then another one flickered across the ash and dun of ruined landscape, there and gone at dusk along a blackened trail after the fire. Soon in the darkness there began a ragged barking, harsh, undone. It raked the brushless slope until it seemed to fall on me, assailed my loss. You're not the only one after the fire. 4, what we can't carry weighs upon us twice, returning in the long taut hours to ask what's waste, what's dear, and what we must abandon here the day we have to pack and run. No mere possessions, everyone transforms into a talisman, embodying the lives and years that we can't carry. How odd it is to live among these fated things, their loss, forgone. The books, the paintings, furniture, grandmother's grand piano, here our wedding china, resting on what we can't carry. So I'll finish up with, surprise, 2 more sonnets. Moorings. Those things we're moored to, like the gypsum sands of Alamogordo, shift within a day and leave us holding useless maps. The way still clear in one sense, foot must step and hands swing forward toward the present, the demands of live and onward. Landmarks slip away in drifts and dunes, surveyors' marks decay. Our lots and lines, our walls and massive stands of trees come down to stump and ash. What's gone still trails us like a broken anchor line, heavy and weightless both somehow, till one cold winter we walk out before first light, glance up where trees should block the sky and find the stars are spinning paths across the night. So something a little more cheerful and joyful for the last one. A little. Things that glow. A childish moment, visiting old friends and settled in the children's room. I doused the light, lay back, and saw a galaxy of faintly glowing stars across the ceiling. First brightening, it seemed, then slowly fading, and felt such joy. How childish that a sea of luminescent stickers could arouse this keen elation. Dreaming through the lens of things that glow, the world is magic. No, it's lit with secret solace. It was so even for Madame Curie, with her clear glass vials of blue-green light, lithe spirits near in darkness. Like a child, how could she know the fate, the cost, how deep the light could go? Thank you.
Terrific. Terrific. Nice.
Thank you.
Nice. Really nice.
That was beautiful, Dee Dee. Thank you for that reading. And I think we all agree that you can't give us too many sonnets. So thank you. Our next reader is Richard Newman. Richard Newman is the author of 3 books of poetry, most recently All the Wasted Beauty of the World from Able Muse, and the novel Graveyard of the Gods. His work has appeared in American Journal of Poetry, Best American Poetry, Boulevard, Literary Matters, Poetry East, Tar River Poetry, and many other magazines and anthologies. He currently teaches creative writing and world literature at Acclaimed University in Morocco. Before moving to Maghreb, he and his family lived in Vietnam, Japan, and the Marshall Islands. Take it away, Richard.
Richard, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I don't get a lot of invitations to read here in Morocco, as you might expect. I would like to say also thanks to Alex for the last book of poems, All the Wasted Beauty of the World. I'm not sure if you know this, but Alex is easily the best editor I ever worked with on any of my books of poems. I remember I won a grant to work on that book, and I took it to Jamaica. And I just sat down with Alex's comments and some other people's, and I put them all in there. And I felt like he became my best friend, sitting on my shoulder, whispering in my ear, like, no, not that line, or catching mistakes. Like, how could I have, I'm an editor, how could I have missed so many things? So it was a pleasure working with him. Yet I'm not going to read from that book as much as it is my favorite book of poems, because it feels like it was another life that I wrote that book and all my books. I think as Carrie said, I've lived in a number of countries since then. I left the US in 2016. I haven't been back since, except for very briefly to visit my father who was sick. So I thought I'd read some poems of my other life the life after my American life. And I thought I'd start with this poem called Smiling with Our Eyes in Morocco. We had been living in Vietnam and I was supposed to come here this semester before, but then the plague happened and we were in lockdown. Right as we were in the airport trying to go to Morocco, they said, nope, no more flights. So I had to wait another semester, and then it wasn't sure whether we were going to be able to go, whether Morocco was going to open up their doors again. And there was a brief window of maybe a couple of weeks where we just barely sneaked in. So this is reflecting that time, which when the plague was still in full force. Smiling with Our Eyes in Morocco. There's maybe one word y'all might want to know, maybe you know it, I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but marché, which is the market, and is an open air market here in Morocco all year round. Although it is chilly where I live, but we live in the mountains, and it is an open air market that is also seasonal, and all the people there get their things from local areas, especially the cherries in cherry season. Oh my Lord, the best cherries I've ever had, and they're so cheap. It's incredible. Anyway, Smiling with Our Eyes in Morocco. My son has never seen the smiles of strangers. The flight from Vietnam to Morocco, our hazmat-suited flight attendant cooed, stretched out gloved hands, but he stared at a face both masked and shielded by plexiglass. In the marché, piled with apples, oranges, pumpkins, spices that took the smoldering colors of fall, masked strangers bend to greet him. They clap their hands and laugh, but he stands silently, unmoved, unsure whether to run to them or away. We're fined if caught without masks, but I smile at my new students. Only a few look up to read my eyes, the crinkles at the corners. In meetings with new colleagues, our glasses fog. I analyze the accents of eyebrows. Today, I took the shortcut through the forest. From a side path I hadn't noticed before, 2 female students crept from a cedar grove. They wore their masks, but held hands furtively. Their footsteps rustled through dead leaves and whispered, "If not now, when?" The late afternoon call to prayer echoed from our campus mosque. I slipped my mask back on as they approached. Some crumbs of nature clung to one girl's back. Their eyes dropped down. I'm sure that mine were smiling. So I think the first poem I wrote after I left the US was in a hammock in the Marshall Islands. I needed a break from poetry and editing. As many of you might know, I edited the magazine River Styx for about 1,020 years. And I was so burnt out on reading everybody else's work, and I hated my own work. I needed a break from poetry and reading. And maybe as people that have been editors before, we usually go into it because we love to read. And then after 10, 15, 20 years, the last thing we want to do on our spare time is read for pleasure. And I lost the joy of reading, and I wanted to find that again. So this is the first poem that I wrote in the Marshall Islands. It's called Sleeping Sea. Each new day hatches from a rooster's throat. Halfway through its life, it snoozes in the sand with dogs. Beyond my hammock, the sea sleeps too, this afternoon, tucked in between beaches at low tide. The sea dreams of new continents and canyons, the creatures that crawled from its reaches 1,000,000 years ago and sometimes return. The sea dreams that shadows of ghost ships caress its dusty floors. When we dream of a calm sea, it means serenity and melancholia. When the sea dreams calmly of us, we can expect storms, king tides, tsunamis. The sea dreams of the moon and us bounding on the moon. The sea dreams of the creatures it spawned, launching out to other worlds covered with other seas, and those seas in turn dreaming of it. In its sleep, the sea chews sunken ships, refrigerators, car batteries. The sea is sick, but sleeping peacefully this afternoon. It swells in its sleep and licks salt onto the shore. The sea slaps itself awake with larger and larger waves as the sun dribbles color on its waters. Each day dies in the throats of dogs, barking and chewing it to pieces. So this is a Vietnam poem. An editor actually rejected this. The first time I sent it, I said it was too political. And I said, I didn't think it was political. Maybe it is, I don't know. Maybe in the big scheme, political. It's called Hanoi Tour Guide Song. It's a triolet. In Chuk Bak Lake, they fished out John McCain, where now young lovers smooch on paddleboat swans. The Viet Minh shot down a fighter plane in Chuk Bak Lake. They fished out John McCain. Humans, the only beings inhumane, both torture bombers and festoon them with bronze. In Chuk Bak Lake, they fished out John McCain, where now young lovers smooch on paddleboat swans. So this is this is one called Ode to the Southeast Asian Bum Gun. I love odes, and I fell in love with the Southeast Asian bum gun. They don't actually use toilet paper most of the time in Vietnam. And originally I thought this was crazy. But then I discovered the bum gun, which usually is perched next to the toilet. And I think the rest of the poem speaks for itself. Coiled like a cobra by the tank and bowl, oh bum gun, you're forever poised to strike. Unlike Japan's Batmobile of toilets with buttons, music, finely calibrated water jets, warmed seats, and electric eye, your blind, no-nonsense nozzle power washes butts from the cheapest bars to five-star hotels, democratizing ass cracks everywhere. Hole hoser, finger fountain, keister geyser. The first time I tried you, I gave myself an enema. You liberate us daily from dingleberries, save us a million rolls of toilet paper, swaths of rainforest. Oh, one fellow expat hated everything in Vietnam, pollution, government, incomprehensibly even the food. But he brought you back to suburban Phoenix, his only souvenir, enthroned near his throne. Once you clean our crack, there's no going back. Humans evolved to walk upright, yet can't lift our noses out of each other's asses. The reason why we pick the mates we do, we like their stink. And you make this less shameful. Your string of water massage, your anal nozzle, you douse our dirt stars, polish our wrinkled pennies, wash our winkers, scour our rusty buttons. And when we finally rise, unburdened, we leave with assholes dripping wet and glistening and feeling cleaner than we could ever be. There's a part of me that never left fourth grade. I apologize. But here's a sonnet in honor of Dee Dee's sonnets as well. This is, I think this is another Vietnam poem. As you can see, Vietnam left a huge impression on me. This is called Your Mother Still Sleeping, I Hold You Up to the Dawn. And obviously I wrote this not long after our son was born. Gamecocks have barked and crowed us both awake, while sunrise throbs through the clouds like a cold sore. Mist gathers in the park where once the war raged. No one now dares break the spell of daybreak. Trees comb mist from the sky. From our 9th floor apartment, I admire the foggy lake like green sea glass, then realize my mistake. It's Saigon smog. Beyond the metaphor, the view of fields and farms stretching to Saigon is nothing if not serene this lonely hour. Light probes the bedroom, piles of laundry, toys and packages still. I need to shave and shower. Instead, I lift you to the blood orange dawn, baptizing you in beauty frothed with poison. This is, I borrowed a line from Liesel Mueller, one of my favorite poets, and I had written a much larger work that I ended up cutting down entirely, but this is one of the sections. It's from a Requiem Mass. I wrote a Requiem Mass, and I think it had 9 parts, and then I decided that the other 8 parts were terrible, so I killed them, appropriate for a Requiem Mass. But I kept this one here called Responsori Libera Me, which is one of the segments of a traditional Requiem Mass. Responsori Libera Me, from a line by Liesel Mueller. After the kill, there is the feast. After the feast, there is the slumber. Our children replace our dear deceased. After our births, we take a number. After the toast, the spirit is gone. There's water to wine, wine into piss. After the kiss, there is the yawn, as boredom nips at the heels of bliss. After a stumble, there is flight. After the crash, there is a broom. When we get home at the end of night, a winter fly laps around the room. After the glory, there stirs the ash. After the talks, there is the war. After we freeze, there is the flash. After a death, an empty drawer. After the loss, we dust the shelves, the pictures in the box lie curled. After we've subtracted ourselves, no difference in the sum of the world. After we've joined the dirt interred, the dusty host, the ranks of the rotten, the nothingness we've been assured won't come until we're long forgotten. This is one called Grave Scything in Takachiho. This is my wife's hometown, a village, really. It's not even a town. It's a tiny place. It's also where her ancestors are buried. And usually the week of called Obon is a celebration of remembering the ancestors, the recent and long dead. And they usually clean the houses, but they also clean the graves. And I helped the family clean the graves of their father and all the other relatives, some not even remembered anymore. A very hot summer in Takachiho, Japan, which is in the southernmost island of Kyushu. Grave scything in Takachiho. Obon, the week for cleaning family graves, when ancestors revisit household shrines and try to stir up guilt. Armed with small scythes, the 3 of us ascend the mountain path to graves that haven't been tended in years. I wonder what the ancestors would make of me, a twice divorced American. Depends how hard I work. We scythe in silence while micro showers range, leveling grass and weeds of Sayaka's father's family. Her father has no grave. He wasn't liked. A few charred bone fragments rest in a vase, now lost to years of clutter, maybe tossed. The day after he died, Sayaka heard her mother, Oma, sing for the first time in decades, like she sings to herself now, her voice soft and delicate as ash. Our sickles whisper to the dead, my mind adrift. Last week, after an hour on Skype, the interviewer ended with, "Good luck." I knew I didn't get the job. Good luck being a cordial notch above "fuck you." When my mom emailed after I'd left the States, "I hope you find what you're looking for. Good luck," I knew what it meant, the last I'd hear from her. I pull and cut above these dead who aren't my blood, who lived when we were enemies, thousands of miles from where my own family dwindles, dies in the unforgiving sandy flats of southern Illinois. What does blood mean anyway, but food for mosquitoes, a few dead ones stuck to our sweaty necks? A toad escapes my blade. We repile stones that toppled from the rains and shifting earth. Oma stands. Her whispered song trails off. At last, our work is finished here. We swig cool barley tea, bow to the ancestors. We did the best we could, we say. Good luck. All right. I'll end with one more. This is my last one. This is a Moroccan poem. This may have been the second Moroccan poem I wrote. It's called Call to Prayer. It's 4 a.m., still dark. Now I'm awake. A muezzin chants from a raspy speaker. Another joins, more strident, across campus. A third warbles from the village, his notes more tentative, half steps from harmony, all of them weaving knots of dissonance. A mesh of pleas and prayers, praise, grim warnings that swirls under the cloudless, starless night. Allah Akbar, prayer is better than sleep. The downstairs neighbors attack the air with coughing. The whole family is sick with COVID. The old lady next door already praying, perhaps to help her climb 3 flights of stairs. And everyone in town imagines God differently, angry, jealous, ripe with mercy. I picture prayers caroming off cold skies and listen to the minaret imploring, there is no God but Allah, while our own small God in footy jammies kicks my head. I've nibbled only a few crumbs of sleep, and when I hear the morning call to prayer, I know I've stayed up too late grading papers, frittered away sleep credits, writing poems, or watching my St. Louis Cardinals lose. My day starts soon. I smother it with pillows, returning to my little nest of dreams, futile, naughty, drab, rolling over, coaxed back to sleep by pre-dawn calls to prayer and those who rise each day in faith. Face east and welcome each workaday dawn. Bless them. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. That was wonderful. And I feel like we really got to travel to a lot of different places through your poems.
Oh, thank you. I saw someone appear for just a second and say something. I wasn't sure what it was. I hope I didn't miss anything important.
I was telling you how terrific your work is. That's what I was saying. A knockout.
Is that Stephen Gibson?
Yeah, yeah.
We published you in another life, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this new work is absolutely out of this world. Really, really great stuff.
You're
Really
my
great
new
stuff.
best friend.
There we go. There we go.
I wish we could have a drink together.
I wish it too. That's great work.
Thank
Thanks.
All right. So our final reader is Lorna Knowles Blake, and she lives in New Orleans and Cape Cod. Her first poetry collection, Permanent Address, won the Richard Snyder Award and was published by Ashland University Press in 2008. Green Hill, her second collection, was published by Able Muse and won the Able Muse Book Prize in 2018. She currently serves as an advisory editor for the Hudson Review and is on the advisory board of Poetry Sunday, a weekly program of WCAI, Cape Cod's public radio station. She is a former editor of Barrow Street. Her poems, translations, essays, and reviews appear regularly in literary journals, both in print and online. Thank you, Lorna.
All right, am I unmuted and can everybody hear me? It's okay. First, I wanted, of course, to thank Alex for publishing my book and for making all these wonderful literary events and opportunities possible, and Carrie and Karina for their help with the reading. And it's just a pleasure to hear Dee Dee and Richard and to read with them as well. I have a slightly different trajectory than Richard. I did not live in the United States until I came to college, and my first language is actually Spanish. I recently was sort of overjoyed to travel. I had occasion to travel to Miami, and it was a fabulous experience, although I have to say it was a little bit like being back at home in a native country. The saturation of Spanish all around was so wonderful, and it was interesting to hear not only Cuban Spanish but Venezuelan Spanish and a lot of the different Spanishes that I had grown up with. So I remember one of my lovely teacher mentors at Sarah Lawrence College saying that he had to go back to Argentina periodically when he stopped dreaming in Spanish. He needed an infusion of language to get his dreams in line. So I thought I would read a few poems because of my travel, and then I'll move on to some poems from the book that Able Muse published and a few new ones sprinkled in. This is called Because I Have No Accent. Because I have no accent, people always ask me, in what language do you dream? By the ocean, always in Spanish. Naranja dulce, limón partido. My sisters are turning a rope, calling out their counting rhymes in the shade of an old roble, which is an elm tree, if I dream I'm somewhere else. In the distance, islands bead the horizon into a chain of names. Isla Culebra, Isla Mona, Caja de Muertos. Seconds later, the scene turns cool, mossy. Green hills rise from low stone walls as the island becomes Ireland. Now the boot of English steps on my dream's slender neck, until great-grandmother's murmuring Celtic diphthongs fill my sleep, rustling like sails that propel me into her safe harbor of softer vowels. Shlanta, she calls as I return to the crisp cadences of parents and their house guests who mingle, consonants clinking like ice cubes in highballs brought out to the pool. Two criadas cut up guanabanas and gossip, while the children of the house lurk in the kitchen listening to wild romances on the radionovela. Voices fade, my dream stalls in the city's glottal morning, but all night long I travel over language, that swaying bridge. And then this is a little translation, if you will. It's called Little Spanish Lessons. One word, sueño, serves for sleeping and dreaming, the twin labors of the night. And pluma, stands for both pen and feather. Feather as wing, synecdoche for flight. And then I also, besides writing my own poems, I love to translate, and I have done some work with in translating just for my own enjoyment, really, the poems of Lorca and Neruda and some other Uruguayan and other poets from the South and Central American region. So I thought I'd read a poem about translation, which has often been called, you know, the art of betrayal or traduttore, traditore, and all that other stuff. But it really is a great way of dealing. I think if you love language, it's an enjoyable enterprise to try to bring something over in just the right way that feels right to you as a writer and as a reader. The art of translation. The family sleeps, but quietly at her desk the translator sits among piles of books, dictionaries in many languages, dead and spoken, grammars, biographies of all concerned. Beside her the dog stirs, whimpering in a dream. The night composes an adagio of appliances and breath as she thumbs through pages, making meticulous notes, an ocean of crumpled possibilities rising in a white tide at her feet. Pale in the light of the computer screen she labors, although the rules of her trade require a subtle balance of accuracy and beauty. She suspects she's after something else. Tonight, for instance, she has rendered Havana 1961 as Revolution Box, and just yesterday, Father turned into Jazzman one night and Soldier the next. Then permanent address seemed best expressed as House of Words. How else to speak of the meaning of home? Somewhere in this legacy of stories, told and retold in a private language of the heart, the land yields, the harvest is rich. She's heard it said that memory has no translation. We know it well in a beloved version, and we know it too well in desolation. Still, she keeps at it, late into the night, mantled in silence, working and reworking this lexicon magic. And then this is also about language and travel, but it's a little more lighthearted. I was recently also in Quebec City, and there are not even dual language highway signs. They're very, very committed to being a French language province and city. So that reminded me of being a student in Europe and sort of the joy of that and the freedom of that, and also the confusion. Words in a second language. Are tourists traveling in a foreign land, unsure of themselves, phrase book in hand, train schedule indecipherable, currency so unfamiliar they overtip or miss the mark, incur disdain, disgust, or just plain ridicule. Later, in their hotel room, suitcases unpacked, settled closets and dresser drawers, brushes on the bureau, and great excitement as they dress for new adventures. Places. Then forget the umbrella, the guidebook, map, and none to mention rules. More careful now, they try to plan ahead for contingencies large and small. Sudden schedule changes, unexpected closings of museum, shop, bureau d'échange. But on sunny afternoons, they may come across as frivolous schoolgirls who throw caution to the wind in the sheer exuberance of being somewhere else, safe in a pack of uniformed cohorts, conquering new landscapes. Forget the map, and let the camera click and pockets fill with coins and souvenirs to show back home. Summer or semester passes, and the foreign scenes by now familiar. This is when overconfidence strolls in and sprawls in the suite's most comfortable chair, a swell and boast unearned and premature. So, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, who is absolutely an object lesson about language and language acquisition and the joy of discovering the power of words and, of course, of her own voice loudly. We are back to using phrases like "inside voices, please." Um, but here's a little triolet I wrote for my own daughter, and now I'm happy that my granddaughter too loves this experience of books as a kind of lullaby. Lullaby. In the lamp's arc, in your little bed boat, you are ferried to sleep by pictures and words, a ritual ballast to keep you afloat. In the lamp's glow, your bed rocks like a boat on a deep sea, and the story's a moat against monsters, against all night hazards. See, the lamp is a moon, your bed is a boat, and sleep is a river of pictures and words. And this is a poem after one of Neruda's odes, Ode to Books. I think of you as the smallest forest, leaf after leaf of paper smelling like a sheaf of wheat, of elemental things, things blessed, and as the open door, the swinging gate to all we know and don't know, sunlight and shadow, a lamp-lit room, the hour growing late. The human castle rises, stone by stone. Sorrow, mortared with beauty, waits between the hard and soft covers of these books we try to own. And then I started years ago when I was a graduate student writing these responses to William Blake's Proverbs of Hell. And partly that came about because I used to go shop at the Gotham bookstore in Manhattan. And when I would walk in and give my order, the lovely man taking the order for my books would say, "Blake, great name for a poet." And I would think, oh, no pressure. But I would go home and I really enjoy the Proverbs of Hell. And so in each of my books, I've actually done a couple of them, or more than a couple, but I take the proverb and then I jump off from the proverb and write my own thing. So this is called, and this was sort of a double Blakean homage. The cut worm forgives the plow. O plow, thou art quick. The invisible worm that lies in your path in the furrowed ground has forgiven your blade of hardened steel, the horse that pulled you, and the cart's cold wheel. I'm going to read another proverb, and then I'm going to move to some sketches of Lorca, which are decimas, 10-line poems that I wrote in response to a line from one of Lorca's gacelas or gasidas. But this is bring out number, weight, and measure in year of dearth. It's Proverb 14. The year after he died, she cooked, and not as if the two of them were at the table, but as if the whole family were expected for supper, all her numbered dead. She weighed the meat, then measured out ingredients for a banquet every day, the foods they loved and the foods they hated that were good for them. Recipes passed down from other countries, other times. In this way, she transformed a year of dearth into a year of plenty, and threw it out each night. Okay, before I turn to the Lorca poems, which, and then I'll read one more and brief and close, but I love the form, the glosa, the glows from the Spanish. So you take 4 lines from a poem and then you write down to the line in each of the stanzas. This is the header of this, the head of the glosa, the cabeza of it is from St. John of the Cross. The fish taken out of the sea is not without a consolation. Its dying is of brief duration and ultimately brings relief. So, far from myself, in pain and yet not feeling, I'm sunk into a trance. All around me, the cosmic dance goes on, its beautiful motet, its counterpoint and pirouette. Is this how I am loved? So well that I am prisoner in a hell devised of tears and sleep? Beset by nothing I can name, I envy the fish taken out of the sea. A shock like that has sweet appeal. The force of elemental change might cause the brain to rearrange and set the body free to feel the hook, the clock, the sun, the real experience of its own end, and the soul, for let us pretend there is a soul and it can heal, in that moment of sensation, is not without a consolation. Flown from its chamber of disease, my soul rejects both love and food. All I can do is tend my mood and stare into its vortices, ignoring those insistent pleas. We need milk. Love, you have to call the plumber. Mom? There is a wall to scale, and I am on my knees. Is a fish more than a person? Its dying is of brief duration, so different from yours. How long your dying took, mother. Compared with what we'd hoped, how unprepared we were, and you, afraid and strong at once in that slow, even song of loud machines and squishy shoes. My sorrow gone, I'd stand to lose you twice. The counselors are wrong. It's more a state than stages, grief, and living there brings me relief. So sketches of Lorca, and I wrote a bunch of these. This is from Few Are the Angels That Sing, Casida of the Lament. There are many, many translations of these poems, and my lines are translations from the poet William Logan, not William Logan, the critic and poet, but another William Logan. The muezzin's calls fall silent. The converso's prayer seeps into the sand and tears muzzle the wind. Then history returns with its swords and decrees. Above the gray walls of Granada, the sky opens every window in every house onto a balcony veiled in latticed sunlight. He leans over the railing, holding 1,000 violins in the palm of his hand, and hears the cante hondo of gypsies thread the air. Even the dogs are quiet in the night, and the violins tune their strings to the angel's immense lament. And then read one more of the Lorca sketches. This is America Drowns Itself in Machines and Laments, from the Ode to Walt Whitman. He came searching for angels in the dark eclipses of New York, under immense curved stairways, up and down chaotic, angry streets, in parks strewn with abandoned objects wrapped in barbed wire and death. Nothing flowed from the bitter root of progress, only apples tasting of gasoline, doves rising in chains to agitate the sky, and fear disguised in dirty needles of rain. Where, he cried, where is the old poet with his beard full of butterflies and the boys, the beautiful boys, singing by the river? So it's like, for me, these are like a little bit like potato chips. I think Dee Dee talked about sonnets. You know, you sit down and suddenly you're writing another sketch or another proverb. So sometimes a literary diet or a writing diet is in order. But I have to say I really love doing them. I'll turn now to something more related to where I am today, which is on the Cape Cod Bay. This is called Intertidal. And many mornings I am out, you can find me on the beach walking the rack line. So twice a day, the pageantry repeats. High tide eddies out, leaving hard-packed sand, the bay's debris twined in marsh grass. Under driftwood, treasure abounds. So too the forgotten plastic shovel, broken bottle, flip-flop sandal from Brazil. How far it has traveled in tendrils of seaweed, motion of moon, water, delivering bones, stones, shells of snails and crabs and clams, some cracked, some translucent, intact, waiting for the next inhabitant. Whelk, periwinkle, hermit crab, I too feel like an eremite. One cold morning, I fail to find anything I've lost in the rack, despite my silent search. Give me, oh, strike that. Fetch up a sign, any sign. I wanted to read a poem about, so I like, I'm just realizing that I'm just really focused on language, but I do kind of like inventing forms too. So I think translation lends itself to that, but also just language and its funniness. This is called prepositional, and my only rule for this poem was that everything had to start with a preposition. In my Spanish girls' school, we were made to memorize everything like this, and I can still do it in Spanish by heart. I can still also only multiply in Spanish, and then I have to translate it. So it's funny when you grow up and your only English subject is English. Prepositional. Above our heads, a ceiling. Across the ceiling, a wide sky. Around the house, birdsong. Between you and me, a table. On the table, bread and salt. Behind us, breadcrumbs. Against a wandering forest. Before this, a long wandering. Beneath us, a rich meadow. Or beneath us, quicksand. Since then, meadows, quicksand. In you, something as of a raft. In me, something like weather. Beyond us, the unfailing tides. And then I found a form. I don't know if Catherine is still listening, but this was invented, I believe, by Mary Merriam. It's called A Basic Me, and it's a really rather fun poem. I think I found a few on the Mitsokamin site, but I enjoyed writing one. And the only thing that I did differently is that I anagrammed the first word. So I rhymed it, but the last word of each couplet is an anagram of the word that starts the couplet. I think you'll hear it. This is called indicatory. Heat can be pleasant unless it is hate. Team is an asset, and more so, a mate. Late is offensive, though not if it's teal. Sale is transactional, money's the seal. File is the record we keep of a life. Fret is a distant relation of strife. Love is that feeling, but also a vole. Lose is the sorrow of all that is soul. Lamp is as bright as a tropical palm. Clam is a synonym for outer calm. Tear is a seed, but it's also a tear. Fair is essential, and common is fear. Spat is a present tense fight in the past. Salt is the element that will outlast. So that was really fun to do. And I think I will close with a poem called Ararat. It feels, I didn't write it during or for or as a result of the pandemic, but it feels to me as though it's perhaps apt. Ararat. No longer afraid, the animals grew restless. Our sons argued in the night. Their wives, sick, querulous, refused to leave the hold. He stayed above, laughing in the storm. Husband, I see you. Hair wild in the wind, the dove alert on his shoulder. Drunk all day in the vineyard after the flood, missing the decks roll, the spin of wheel against palm, the arcs yaw and pitch. Lying there naked, shaming your sons. Truth is, husband, I know you. He needed the wine, needed sea legs to walk on this hard land. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna ask everyone to unmute if you would like to applaud all of our poets. Thank you, Lorna. That was wonderful.
Yay.
Terrific, 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 beautiful work. Beautiful.
Beautiful.
And we have a few minutes left. If anyone has questions for any of our poets, you can feel free to put it in the chat or just go ahead and ask it.
Ode you, we send you. Richard, Dee Dee, they have no questions.
Well, I will start with one question, which I always seems relevant to Able Muse poets, and all of you read formal poems. So what is your relationship to form? What kind of role does it have in your writing? And this is open to all of you.
I'm tempted to say, well, I'm just a poor country karate teacher. I didn't go to school in English or writing, although I did it all my life. But I find it's ingrained in me, I guess, from reading in form starting in childhood. And it forces me to elevate what I'm saying, to hone it. I find it easier to write in form than to do a good job writing in free verse. So that's my answer.
When I stopped writing and when I left the US for a couple of years, I certainly didn't want to write in form anymore. I was tired of it. Like everything was iambic pentameter. I was so tired of it. So after not writing, I started listening to the chants that the Marshallese were doing, and also the Micronesian people, the Federated States of Micronesia, and I loved the chants. So I started using those forms and those rhythms, and that kind of started me writing again after I quit. The poem that I read, The Sleeping Sea, was kind of inspired by those chants. But then as I started working on that book through Marshall Islands and then Vietnam, I found myself slipping back into forms and writing triolets and sonnets again as well. But since then, I like to break it up and try to surprise myself and write in either new forms or no forms at all, or other forms that I've heard and other kinds of poetry, not maybe in traditional, English styles.
I think people often ask me what made you decide to write poems in English. And I think that from the time that I was very, very small, my North American father would recite poems that he had, and his phrase was, "I have it by heart." Not "I know it by heart," but "I have it by heart," which I think is just so telling because it was a part of him. It wasn't cerebral, it was in his body, it was bodied. The language of his poems that he knew that he had by heart was literally in his, blood coursing. So he had to, I can still actually do it. He would take me out for a drive we lived at the time in Puerto Rico, and it was very dry during the dry season and very different during the rainy season. And he'd say, "Let's go find a river." And while we were going to find the river, he'd start with a poem and I was supposed to pick up. So he would start, on either side the river lie, long fields of barley and of rye, the sheathed the wold and clothed the sky. So I only ever thought about poems as really being something, organic for me in the English language. So I liked that. And because of his age and generation, I think I was exposed to more formal poems earlier. And that was a great appeal. But I came later through the usual workshop bromides of, it's a container for hot emotions, it's generative, it's so I thought those were useful too as a writer. Form has its uses.
Lately, I've been writing in a more formal structure. I usually, it's not that formal of a structure, but what I found is that even within that structure, for a music to hear it differently, I will still play with white space. And I like how even what seems to be a formal poem, everything is on the left. Is that it? Right, the left margin. I may make a stanza break where ordinarily it shouldn't be, or I'll move one word like two spaces in. And with that spacing, the sound of the poem is what I'm looking for, and I feel it gets different versus if I were to stay, which is fine, just to stay on a strict formal. My apologies for being late, but I had a chance to run to see a New York production of Chekhov's first play, and it's at the Irish Arts Center. It ends in a week. Anyone in New York, you have to see this. It's completely different. It's fabulous. The Guardian loved it. So that's why I apologize again for coming in so late.
Does anyone else have a question? And if not, Alex, did you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Carrie, and thank you everyone for coming this afternoon and listening to our wonderful poets. As you've seen, we had two editors with us here, Richard and Lorna, and both published me in their journals, by the way. And also, I'll have to mention that you should check the links in the chat where I put the links to all the poets' websites and also to Able Muse newsletter links. And I should mention, usually I don't know this ahead of time, but we know who is going to be reading next month. It's going to be a book launch event, and we'll have 3 poets with brand new books who will be reading from their brand new books. And we'll have Wendy Vidlock, we'll have Nicole Caruso Garcia, and Janice Harrington, who will be reading. And our host will be John Drury, who is with us tonight, this afternoon. So thank you all, and I hope I'll be sending out the announcements if you're on our newsletter with the links to the next month's event. And I'll also be having a video recording of this afternoon's event for everyone in a day or so. So thank you all, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
inviting
very
us.
much.
Great,
reading.
terrific work.
Great stuff.
Really, terrific.